Um, However, I told him I have to do my duty. I'm on the schedule, and unfortunately, we have to listen to me. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Sorry, I had to check whether I switched the stoves off. Today is cooking breakfast, so 7:30. I'll go make the plate quickly, and we'll have a small interval so that we can be more thoughtful on the subject matter of today. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Mantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, 8th chapter. Today's text is text number 32. How do I make it bigger? Okay, that's good. Sata Vadhuta Jaladha Parat Patan Grahascha Tat Dristi Vismustu Rochi Saha Bodhaya Swasahata Vichuksobhur Nir Radha Bhita Dijibha Krusuhu. Nikolai, I know. Satavadhuta jaladha parapatam grahascha tat dristi vismusta rochisaha ambodhaya swasahata vichuksubhur niradha bhita dijabha vichukrusuhu. Okay, let's try one more time. Satavadhuta jaladha patan grahascha tat dristi vimusta rochisaha ambodhaya swasahata vichuksubhur nirradha bhita dijibhu vichukrusohu. Okay, please.
Tatavaduta jalada parapatan grahashchata drishti vimushta ruchishaha ambodhaya shvasa hata vichuk shubur nirrada beta vijiba vichuk krushahu.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please try. Okay, I guess it's a tongue twister. Word for word, Sata by the hair on Lord Nishingadev's head. Avadutaha shaken. Jalada the clouds. Parapatam scattered. Graha, the luminous planets Cha and Tat Dristi by his glaring glance. Vimusta taken away. Rochisaha whose effulgence. Ambodha, the water of the oceans and seas. Swasahata, being struck by Lord Nishingadev's breathing. Vichuksuhu became turbulent. Niradha Bita, frightened by Nishingadev's roaring. Digibha, all the elephants guarding the quarters. Vichukrusuhu cried out. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The hair on Nishingadev's head shook the clouds and scattered them here and there. His glaring eyes stole the effulgence of the luminaries in the sky, and his breathing agitated the seas and oceans. Because of his roaring, all the elephants in the world began to cry in fear. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 10:41, Yat Yat Vibhuti Mat Sattvam Srimad Urjitam Evava Tat Tat Eva Evava Gachatvam Mama Tejo Misa Sambhavam. Knowing that all beautiful, glorious, and mighty creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. The illumination of the planets and stars in the sky is but a partial manifestation of the Lord's effulgence. There are many wonderful qualities of different living entities. But whatever extraordinary things exist are but a part of the Lord's Tejas, His illuminations or brilliance. The deep waves of the seas and oceans and the many other wonders within the creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead all become insignificant when the Lord, in His special feature, incarnates within this material world. the deep waves of the seas and the oceans, and the many other wonders within the creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead all become insignificant when the Lord, in his special feature, incarnates within this material world. Everything is insignificant in comparison to his personal, all-defeating, transcendental qualities. Om Gyana Timarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumitam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhurevacha Patitanama Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So again, another nice verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, we've been getting all the juicy bits. Yesterday we heard about the heart and how his heart was ripped out. So all the gaudy details are also there. And today we get something a little different, but again, showing Lord Nishingadev's glory. So the verse is pointing out how that even material nature itself is in complete awe when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Lord Nishingadev in this case, has appeared. Lord Nishingadev's head shook the clouds and scattered them here and there. So even the clouds were scattering. His glaring eyes stole the effulgence of the luminaries in the sky. So of course, during the day, it's very, very bright. We know the sun is producing all the light in this world. And of course, it is very, very bright and effulgent. We understand going to the sun planet, you need a specific type of body to be able to go to the sun planet. But we can see that in this case, when the Supreme Lord has appeared, his glaring eyes stole the effulgence of all the luminaries in the sky. His breathing agitated the seas and the oceans. And because of his roaring, all the elephants in the world began to cry in fear. So, of course, elephants, we understand, are very, very mighty creatures in the jungle, animals in the jungle. And, in this case, of course, the word for word gives us a little bit more information there. Specifically, Prabhupada says, Dijibha, all the elephants guarding the quarters around Hiranyakashipu's palace. But here Prabhupada translates as all the elephants, of course, in the world, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, it's not, just one person becomes afraid. But we see the Lord's appearance agitates everything within the world. So we see that, of course, Lord Nishingadev's appearance, the Lord appears as Nishinga to protect Prahlad Maharaj. And of course, at the same time, it depends on your perspective, but even though Lord Nishingadev was so fearful, Prahlad Maharaj wasn't in the least bit afraid. Whereas, Hiranyakashipu, of course, he was displaying that he was not fearful until Lord Nishingadev's claws tore him up. So he was, showing off that he was, the most powerful entity in all the worlds until Lord Nishingadev's claws tore him up. So we need to understand the supreme nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, that he is the ultimate controller. And this is the purpose of studying the scriptures, or one of the purposes of studying the scriptures very, very scrutinizingly, so that in our minds we can also become convinced that Krishna is the supreme controller. There's not a blade of grass that moves without his sanction. Of course, we understand that we're also part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Krishna. We are the same in quality, but in quantity, very, very minute. Bhagavad Gita gives us the exact value, 1/10,000th, the size of the tip of your hair. And so many descriptions are given to us so that we can try to remember and act in a proper context regarding our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we understand we are spiritual beings, but we're here in the material world undergoing this material experience. But this is not our real home. So, of course, we see Bhagavad Gita gives us all the details we need to know about, living day-to-day life. Krishna is giving this transcendental knowledge to his friend Arjuna. Of course, Arjuna is a pure devotee of the Lord. Nevertheless, for our purpose, he is playing this part of being bewildered. And of course, in that bewildered state, he's inquiring what is his duty. He's does not want to fight in the battle. His idea, of course, he had various ideas, but one of his ideas was to go to the forest and, just meditate. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to kill his family members. But gradually, he accepts Krishna as his spiritual master and asks him to guide him. And so for us, we're also in a similar situation where we've been bewildered for countless lifetimes, and undergoing this material experience. Fortunately, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we've now got an opportunity to regain our original constitutional position and thereby become qualified to go back home, back to Godhead. So, of course, we see that the appearance of the Lord is an amazing experience. And even Arjuna himself, he was a little unsure at some point, is this the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And he asked, Krishna to show him his universal form. And of course, he got a glimpse of that. And then at that point, we understand that even Arjuna had become fearful, seeing the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He could see, all of the family members of his, just being devoured. And it was such a ghastly affair that, he asked Krishna to not show that universal form anymore. And so the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is given, in so many places. Bhagavad Gita 10:8, it's explained, I am the source of all the spiritual and the material worlds. Krishna is saying that everything originates from him. So as inconceivable as it might seem, then in Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Krishna is saying that the material nature works under my direction. And so we also understand from Bhagavad Gita that material nature is not independent. And even us as living entities, all of our actions, we think, is being carried out by me, myself, and I. But unfortunately, Bhagavad Gita dispels that illusion, and it is explained how all of these workings are being carried out by the three modes of material nature. So we see that everybody's power is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even at some point, we read that even Hiranyakashipu was asking his son, Prahlad Maharaj that where is or who is your master? And Prahlad Maharaj said, yes, my master is the same person as who is your master too. And of course, this infuriated Hiranyakashipu even more when he was explaining that. And so the sooner we all can accept that, or at least I should say for myself, that there is a Supreme Controller, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself, and everything is under his direct control. We see so many powerful entities in the world from time to time get even bewildered by the Supreme Lord in his different manifestations and features. Of course, Hiranyakashipu was thinking that he had got so much of mystic powers over his lifespan, and he at some point began to think that he was invincible. He had so many boons he had accumulated. He had conquered the higher planetary systems, middle, lower planetary systems. He was as if he was a supreme controller. But unfortunately, we need to understand the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without understanding the Lord's potency, we'll continue to be bewildered and continue in this cycle of repeated birth and death. Bhagavad Gita again 7:7 confirms the Lord's power, there is no superior truth than me. And even in the Bhagavatam, first canto, third chapter, text 28, it is established there that Krishna is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is just by illusion that the living entity, bewildered by the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities. So that famous verse 327 in Bhagavad Gita. We think that we are in control of our life. And yes, to a certain degree, there is some minute independence. And this is what we need to be able to understand in proper context, that this minute independence should not be misused. So ultimately, we're all trying to go back home, back to Godhead. And of course, we said the other day that one of the goals of life is Krishna Prem, Krishna Bhakti, that we want to achieve love of Godhead. And we understand that the easiest way to do it is to be able to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. So we should meditate on this more and more. What does it mean, the devotional service of the Lord? All the scriptures culminate in this analysis that the highest responsibility for the living entity is to engage in the loving devotional service of the Lord. We understand what is pure devotional service and how to practically implement this in our life. We should use that minute independence we have to contemplate. And by contemplating, of course, is not going to get us there to the goal. We need some action. And so action by how to engage in the loving devotional service of the Lord. And in this way, gradually we can purify ourselves of all these anarthas that have stuck to us for so many lifetimes in this material world. So all of these conditionings that we've become so attached to, we need to start to dissolve and shed. Oh. Maybe we can try to multitask. I can try. I know it's very difficult, but I can try to multitask.
No problem setting up.
Oh, Jai, you got it all together?
Yeah,
You found it?
yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, Kala Swaroop made up the plate. Thank you. So from Prahlad Maharaj's viewpoint, of course, we understand Bhagavad Gita confirms he was a pure devotee of the Lord, one of the Mahajans. Bhagavad Gita 9:31 confirms my devotee never perishes. And even Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto we're going to read that, even Prahlad Maharaj says, that he is not afraid of Lord Nrsingadev. And he explains that, he is more fearful of material existence. Someone sent me the other day. No, I shouldn't say. What else do we have? We spoke about Arjuna and the universal form. So we understand, of course, that Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is situated in everyone's heart as the Super Soul, and he is able to give us direction. However, we understand the analogy of the two birds, that the Super Soul is there, but we need to become practiced in terms of how to take direction and guidance from the Super Soul. Otherwise, the Super Soul is there as witness, overseer, and permitter. The essence, of course, for us is to see how to mainly dissolve this false pride that we seem to hold very, very close to our heart, that, we are the controllers. And of course, this is the mentality of wanting to be a controller, that we have taken birth in this material world. But the sooner we can realize that we are not the controllers, we are just a minute spirit soul, the better it will be for us. What else did I have? So, just one or two simple practical examples, just to understand that we are not the controllers. Of course, for those of us that keep jobs, it's applicable to every one of us, but for those of us that work in the outside world, we might think that we are controllers, but of course, when your boss comes in your midst, then quickly, we understand we are not big controllers anymore, that my boss or my CEO is the real boss of the company. But in a similar way, this analogy is there that, we think that we are the controllers until we can understand that there is a supreme controller. So, of course, there's so much of nectar in all of these transcendental literatures, and we should absorb ourselves in hearing, reading Srila Prabhupada's books regularly as a reminder of our constitutional position as eternal servant of Krishna. But of course, at least for me, remembering these things becomes very difficult. I read something and, probably 20, 30 minutes later, can't remember anymore. And still, that's no excuse for not hearing or reading. We should still continue to practice in this way. Of course, there's so many WhatsApp groups now, so many email groups, different things are there. So much of nectar is there. So many devotees are painstakingly taking their time to, sift through the facts, give us so many nectarian quotes, nectarian verses that, sometimes resonates with us, sometimes doesn't resonate with us. And it seems like there's an ocean out there of nectar that we should or can imbibe in our lives. But it will be a sad day if we don't at least start to work on ourselves, start to try to clean our hearts, like yesterday's class was about cleansing the heart. If we don't start to make a practical plan for myself. So me, Dhruva, has got, unlimited anartas, that's for sure. But if I can just start by keeping a notebook of some sort, whether it's on your phone, whether it's a practical physical notebook, take one quote, one facet at a time, and try to see how we can gradually rid ourselves of these unwanted anartas, unwanted qualities that we have. So, if I recognize, of course, the first part of the problem might be recognizing that, we are not the supreme controllers, that we are insignificant beings in the presence of the Supreme Lord. But, I've got a host of anartas that's, attached to my heart. So if I can identify at least one of them, and like I said, there's unlimited, but at least one of them. So for example, if it is, envy, for example, and if I'm envious, everything around me, everyone around me, including the Supreme Lord, then I need to chart a corrective action plan of how am I going to get rid of this quality of envy. And so this is the essence of all of these lectures that we're hearing, reading Prabhupada's books. Otherwise, my life can just become, after 30 years, just waiting for others to, glorify me. So like, it's very nice Taraka Prabhu is in our midst, direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And, he's always very, very encouraging to the devotees. And, even for the Srimad Bhagavatam class, I think many of us wait for the end of the class to come and wait for Taraka Prabhu to say, very nice class. But, if that just becomes my sole motivation to wait for Taraka Prabhu to be the decider and, hear those words, very, very nice class, I would have learned nothing. I'd, still continue to hear and read. And of course, hearing and reading Prabhupada's books, the effect is there, it's gradual. It doesn't happen overnight. But still, I could just be stuck in this material world, thinking that most things that I'm reading and hearing is applicable to other devotees around me. And unfortunately, in this way, I could waste this valuable human form of life and not rid myself of all of these anartas. And I think, when we see other devotees, I should be inquiring from them. Of course, confidential devotees, we don't want to broadcast these things because our false ego will get the better of us. But when I, inquire from devotees, confidential devotees around me, I should be inquiring, am I getting rid of my envy? Have you noticed, am I getting rid of my envy? And, this should become, a gatekeeper. And so, if Taraka Prabhu starts to recognize, after a few years that I think, some inroads is being made. Of course, it's going to be very difficult because we're in this material world. Unless we're 100%, 100% Krishna conscious all the time, hearing no prajalpa, no collective prajalpa, it's going to become very, very difficult. But I think, if we take these points, that, we've recognized our anarthas in our heart, stuck, attached to our heart with super glue. Yeah, there's so many nice glues these days. And yeah, when I find a new glue, then I think, yes, this is what's glued most of these anarthas to my heart. So how to undo it? That should be the goal of life. So I think we can, what else? Take shelter of the Supreme Lord. Now, recognize the Supreme Personality of Godhead before a crisis in our life appears. So we don't want to become in that situation and start to think about Queen Kunti's prayers. None of us want to do that. Pray like Queen Kunti. That so many calamities were there in her life that eventually, she recognized that bring on the calamities, because this is when I can remember you. So let's not bring ourselves to that point. Let's try to become smarter and do the work before any crises happens in our lives. So we understand we need to be equipoised in happiness and distress. Still, at the same time, don't wait for a crisis. We need to learn or practice more how to build a strong bhakti foundation. And, in the association of devotees, this can, be achieved relatively quickly, actually. But it's how much of work do we want to put into it versus how much of time do we want to spend building our material lives. So, of course, the analogy is there that, if we spend time building our bhakti creeper, then, it'll be as if the analogy can be used that we'll be building a solid foundation. Whereas if we spend more time with material things, material life, making so many accumulations, and, we as devotees have become so expert in justifying, all of these accumulations. But all of these accumulations we accumulate materially, or material things that we accumulate can be, the analogy can be of, building a sand castle. So when we go to the ocean or the beach, and as kids we used to build these different types of sand castles along the shore. And sometimes kids used to make beautiful sand castles, so much of detail. But what happens when the ocean wave comes? When the tide rises, the ocean wave comes and it washes it away. So this is what happens when we accumulate material assets, and not just physical assets. We might become proud of giving class, proud of so many things. Still, we need to be mindful that pride will not get us anywhere. It's just another material asset that we're accumulating. So we need to become wise and build a solid foundation on bhakti, and this will be as if we're building on higher ground, not alongside the shore. Okay, that's all I have, I think. The Lord's supreme appearance in the world has shaken even material nature. Thank you, devotees. Any additions, subtractions, comments, corrections, input, different points of view, angles, please share them. Thank you.
I have a few comments.
Please.
And I want to thank you for a nice class. You mentioned that we want to be Krishna conscious with before any calamity befalls us. Not that we have to wait until the situation is so dire that we have no choice but to cry out to Krishna in desperation, but that immediately we should take shelter of the Lord. And I'm thinking about that, and of course that's very true. But from another perspective, our situation really actually is very dire already. We're already in the midst of a calamity where we're stuck here in the material world, encaged by the network of our senses and our mind in these bodies that are gradually aging and becoming diseased, and we're having to struggle with the material nature, even for our very existence. All kinds of unnatural conditions are imposed upon us, and at every moment we are threatened by the prospect of meeting a timely or an untimely death. We can be forced to check out at any time, and without having achieved life's ultimate goal. That's a calamity. That's a pretty serious calamity. But we're facing that prospect at every moment. We don't know when we will die. And in the course of any ordinary day, we may be gambling with our very lives. We get into an automobile and drive, and anything could happen. We're driving at speeds that are, in many cases, highway speeds are easily adequate to terminate somebody's life if things go badly. We may drive very carefully, but there's no guarantee that those around us will also be driving carefully. We're driving on roads. Sometimes there's nothing dividing us from the oncoming traffic except for a line painted on the pavement. That's all there is separating us from instantaneous death, getting splattered. That's we don't think about it, but I think about it because I've been in a serious car accident, and I can tell you that every time I get into a car, I have flashbacks. I think about these things. I know what an intense impact is like in a vehicle. It's terrifying, and I think about these things all the time. Some individual, especially, I don't know, Srila Prabhupada advised us not to drive at night. My father always cautioned me against driving on Friday nights when there's a lot of drunks on the road. People are intoxicated, and terrible things happen. I used to have a long commute to work um, every day, and often worked at the night shift. But I there was a stretch of highway that I had to drive along. This was in New York, um, and this it was Southern Parkway was the actual name of this highway, but it was known all over New York. It is known as um, uh, Blood Alley
Mm.
because of the number of fatal accidents that happened there. And I'll tell you that I- this is hard to believe, but every single day that I commuted to work, both coming and going, I would see at least one fatal accident every single day. On the shoulder, I would see bodies lined up like a bunch of sardines, bunch of bodies lined up, covered in white sheets, and the sheets would be soaked red with blood. Every day, I'd see cars that looked like crushed tin cans. You couldn't recognize that it was a vehicle, and oftentimes there would be teams of first responders there cutting and prying apart the wreckage, trying to remove whatever was left of the occupants of those vehicles. I saw a great many horrific accidents, really terrible. Can happen to anybody at any time. I'm going off on a tangent here, but, but that we're in this situation where we're subject to death in horrible ways, or even natural ways. There's so many ways that our lives can end. Our heart can just stop at any moment. Lots of people are going through that. People are just, suddenly one day they just drop dead. And um, so, and to leave your body without having achieved life's goal, without having become fully Krishna conscious, that's a real disaster. That's a calamity. We have such an opportunity, such an extremely rare opportunity. We really, really want to make sure that we take full advantage of that opportunity while we have it. We can make an assessment. How much progress have I made in however many years I've been practicing Krishna consciousness, and how many years do I have left? At this rate, what are the chances of me, uh, becoming seriously Krishna conscious before I'm forced to check out? Will I actually achieve bhava or Krishna prema, or is this going to take multiple lifetimes? And if I have to take another birth, will I even choose to take up Krishna consciousness in a subsequent birth? I might have the opportunity, but I could also fall into Maya. At any time, we can fall into Maya. There's, another calamity. Never mind death. You may live, but you can just be um, victimized by Maya. Srila Prabhupada told us that, as long as you have a material body, fall down is a possibility. It can always happen. And then you lose the opportunity for any progress. You lose a chance to save yourself. Anyway, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that topic. What I'm really thinking about is Lord Nrsimhadev. There are these wonderful descriptions in this chapter, and I wish I could direct devotees to the lecture Srila Prabhupada gave in Mayapur on these verses, but somehow or other they don't seem to exist. Somehow or other the recordings were not made, or they were lost, or something happened. Um, the database has transcripts of all of the lectures and conversations, but I have searched for years and years trying to find the things that I know I heard Srila Prabhupada say these things, and I cannot find them. Um, and it's very distressing because his descriptions were so vivid, so wonderful, transcendently wonderful. Srila Prabhupada had an amazing quality, an extraordinary transcendental, like a mystic opulence, the ability to transport people who heard his descriptions of Krishna Lila or the spiritual world and so on. He would give, sometimes he would just start to describe some wonderful story, and devotees would listen to this, and suddenly the entire material world would disappear. Everything would disappear, and we would be transported to that place and that time and experience everything that Srila Prabhupada was describing in incredibly vivid detail. It was very hard to describe, but absolutely mind-blowing, just an amazing experience. We sometimes it happens that I don't know, uh, let's say you go to see a movie in a nice theater, very large screen, excellent sound system. They turn the lights down, everything disappears. It's just you and whatever is happening on the screen, and the plot, the storyline is very, very captivating, and you forget everything, and you become wrapped up in the story to the extent that it's like you're right there, and you start to experience the joys, the sadness, the pleasures and pains of characters in the movie. You may laugh, you may cry. Um, Even though none of it is real, but you become so caught up in what you're experiencing that you forget reality. You forget all about your own life. You forget who you are and where you are, and
Wow.
you just become absorbed in this story.
That's a good
Probably,
point. Yeah.
pardon?
That's a very powerful point, actually. This is the whole reason we're in this material world, right? We've become acclimated to the material world to the point that we kind of like in a movie theater. And,
Yes, the material world is like this also. We are watching um, the life events of a particular person that we identify with. There's a particular body.
right.
I think that I am Tarika Das, this funny-looking fellow who's not too bright and makes a lot of unfortunate mistakes in his life. I get all caught up in the trials and tribulations of this fellow's life, and I think I am that body. Thank
Wow.
goodness I'm not that body because it's a wreck. But so we there can be illusion on top of illusion. Under Maya's spell, we think that we are this body, and then that body watches a movie, and then we think we're somebody else's body, and it can go on and on like that. But my point is that Srila Prabhupada's descriptions were so vivid and transcendentally. I can't find a word to describe. So rich and detailed and just real. When Srila Prabhupada spoke about Krishna, and you were blessed to be in his presence, you experienced Krishna. It wasn't somebody telling you a story. You were there and you experienced it. That was what we experienced. It was just extraordinary. And so there was this day in Mayapur when Srila Prabhupada described the appearance of Hiranyakashipu, and from starting from before he emerged from the pillar, and the content of these verses that we've been discussing for the past week or so, all of this he discussed in elaborate detail, and today's verse as well. How Lord Srimad expanded himself into an immense form that was so immense that the hairs on his head were scattering the clouds in the sky. Legions of soldiers, the soldiers of Hiranyakashipu, Lord Nrsimhadev was annihilating them by the thousands, just with the tips of his fingernails, just completely obliterating them, splattering them, crushing them, scattering their body parts hither and thither. Extraordinary, but Srila Prabhupada described all these things in such amazing detail. The fierceness, the intensity of the anger, because his dear devotee had been threatened by Hiranyakashipu, and so Lord Chaitanya was so extremely fiercely angry, more angry than anyone could ever be, supremely angry. And simultaneously manifested all these wonderful qualities. Srila Prabhupada described how the hairs on his body were brilliant white, like the silver light of the moon. And I've described before how he talked about the intensity of Lord Nrsimhadev's anger, how even his eyes were crossed in anger. Because when you become very angry, all your muscles become very tense, and in the case of Lord Nrsimhadev, even doesn't have a material body with muscles like us, but his eyes were crossed because of the intensity of the tension generated by his anger, and then anger was it was based upon his affection for Prahlad Maharaj. He was protective of his devotee because Prahlad Maharaj had so much endeared himself to the Lord by his pure devotion. Extraordinary devotion to the exclusion of everything. He depended upon the Lord cent per cent. He made no effort to try to protect himself. He only took shelter of the Lord, and so the Lord gave him complete protection. He had no other shelter. He depended completely upon Krishna, and so Krishna manifested this extraordinary form for his protection. It's an extraordinary story, but I'm thinking about Srila Prabhupada's description. When I think about it, I experience again being transported and seeing all these things, hearing the extraordinary, the roaring and the shrill laughter of Lord Nrsimhadev, this immense form scattering the clouds and annihilating legions of soldiers in an instant. The drops of blood on his mane and face, and it's just extraordinary. Anyway.
Thank you so much for sharing those points. Yes, definitely urgency is now, and no matter how we try to describe our lives, still we should understand, like you were saying, death can come at any moment. And even we heard Prabhupada say, at the time, his disciples, he was noticing, are not sufficiently afraid of Maya. They're thinking, I have so much of knowledge now. Yes, Prabhupada, amidst giving us this knowledge as well. And, I'm practicing and training. And so, they became a little so-called fearless as far as the material energy, and Prabhupada was, explaining that even he was afraid of Maya. So yeah, we shouldn't underestimate these things. But I think the point is that we all need to make a plan. Hearing these things definitely is very, very nice and soothing. This is why we have to, read Krishna book regularly so that, we can be in those pastimes of the Lord, transport ourselves, even, if it's just for the duration of whatever we're reading or hearing, even if it's just for that duration, at least transport ourselves. But the real work needs to be done. How am I going to get rid of these anarthas that are attached to my heart? That takes, extra work. Of course, if, the Supreme Lord appears before us and kills us, no worries, we're getting liberation. But we know that that's not going to happen. And I think the danger sometimes is that, we read these pastimes, for example, Prahlad Maharaj, how he was protected. I think that, yes, I'm a devotee too. So, I'm trying. I'm a struggling sadhaka. We got all these humble phrases we use. I am the lowest of the lows, straw in the street. And, I give myself these descriptions. And I think that, okay, Krishna will be merciful. And he understands my heart. He understands I really want him. Unfortunately, it's not enough. I can think like that, for many, many lifetimes. But I need to do the real work of getting rid of these anarthas, climbing the yoga ladder, getting to the stage or trying to get to the stage of anartha nivriti. We need to make, spiritual advancement. And how is it going to happen? It's going to happen in the association of devotees. Unfortunately, even though we may have, so many issues with everybody around us, this devotee did that to me, that devotee did this to me, this devotee treated me like that, that's why I can't go there and get that association. We can come up with unlimited excuses, but unfortunately, no excuse for not getting the association of devotees. Go find the association if you have to. Because ultimately, everything is against us. We had an interesting discussion the last couple of days here on the farm, and I forget where it started now. That's how poor my memory is. But maybe some discussions with Rajak Damananda, and we are pointing out how when you go to India, for example, or third world countries, most third world countries are like that, there's electrical wires, high voltage wires, um, not sufficiently protected, from the public. So even, if you go to India, many of you have been to India, that, these high voltage lines are within reaching distance of even small children, even 3-4-year-old children can even, just stand against a light pole and, touch all these wires. But we don't see so many reports of, mass electrocutions, for example, happening in India or third world countries for that matter. And, if you think about it for a second, why is it not so? And of course, the skeptic will say, well, the media is not so well attuned to covering these things. So there's, trillions of people dying in India and we just don't hear about it just because of that. But no, actually, one devotee was pointing out that no, it's, there's a lot of common sense, even in children in these third world countries, that they know don't go and touch these high voltage lines. Whereas here in America, it seems like the government is protecting us to some degree by making it inaccessible. But all these things that's designed so-called to protect us is actually putting us more into an illusory state, where we sometimes fail to use even our common sense. So, as much as we think we're making advancement, it's actually, to some degree, material advancement. And, we got nothing against material advancement too. But how much of energy is being given by the government, for example, to allow us to advance spiritually as well. So this is where the focus needs to be, spiritual advancement. And this is what we need to contemplate more and more. Am I making a real spiritual advancement? So yes, the urgency is now, like Taraka Prabhu was saying, the highways, are death traps. Death can come at any moment. We know that theoretically, but have we really fully realized it? And are we ready to get out of this body? And if we're not sufficiently Krishna conscious, we know what's going to happen. Whatever thoughts we are having at the time of death, that's the destination we're going to have. So let us try to have spiritual thoughts more and more. Let us focus on associating with the Lord by chanting his holy names, and this way we can get some direct association. At least if we can chant Hare, and death comes, at least we'll be saved. So don't take that lightly. Anybody else? Any other comments, questions, devotees, thoughts, realizations that you had on this subject matter? If anybody is wondering where they can find a devotional service, please, you can just message me. Don't hesitate. We have unlimited amounts of devotional service. Right here in Juniata County, right here in Port Royal, the city of Port Royal, right here at Gita Nagari Farm. We have unlimited amounts of devotional service. So please take advantage. The sale is on, it's continuous, and it's like an ever wish fulfilling tree, this tree of devotional service at Gita Nagari. So the sale is on, rock bottom prices. Most of it is free. Please come take advantage of devotional service. Thank you, devotees, for your attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Go Brahmanande, Hari Hari Bo. Okay, how do I assign the meeting? No, I can't.